Hi there, and welcome to It's Just Racing, hosted by Jim and Jim. I'm Jim,
And I'm Jim.
and we're here to talk about racing. First, some late breaking news out of the NASCAR Truck Series. Christian Rose, who was supposed to run for Rookie of the Year this year with Nice Motorsports, has lost his sponsorship and will not be competing full time. This news just hit yesterday. Bailey Curry is going to be driving that truck now for the foreseeable future until Christian Rose can find someone else to write him a check. The World of Outlaws opened up their season down in Volusia in Florida this week. 4 days of racing, the Dirt Car Nationals. Wednesday, A-Main was won by Carson Macedo, and then the NASCAR guys took over. Thursday, Christopher Bell finished first. Photo finish with Kyle Larson. They put on a heck of a show on Thursday night. Friday, Kyle Larson won. Saturday, Kyle Larson won again. So 2 feature wins and a second for Larson. He also won the overall in the opener of the World of Outlaws. Moving on to Supercross. Supercross moved into Tampa. So it was the first round of the East Coast Championship for the 250s. The 250 heat races were won by R.J. Hampshire and Max Anstey. 450 heat races were won by Cooper Webb and Chase Sexton. Last chance qualifier in the 250 was Lance Kubush. Sorry, never heard of him, so I probably pronounced his name wrong. And the 450 last chance qualifier winner was Mitchell Oldenburg. In the 250 main event, Pierce Brown took the lead, led about half the race, crashed pretty hard. They had to red flag the race, do a staggered restart. Max Anstey ended up winning, with Daxton Bennick second and Cameron McAdoo rounding out the podium. After the race, Daxton Bennick was docked 5 championship points for jumping during a red flag. He keeps his finish position, but was docked 5 points in the championship. So the points are Max Anstey in first, Cameron McAdoo moves up to second, Seth Hamaker to third, Bennick dropped from second to fourth, and Tom Vial rounds out the top 5 after round 1 in the 250 East. In the 450s, main event was won by Malcolm Stewart. Cooper Webb came in second, Jason Anderson third. This was Stewart's first win after 108 starts in the 450 class.
It's good to see Malcolm finally get that win. The last few years, he's been improving and getting faster, but he's always had those injuries, those little mental mistakes. But he seems to have cleaned that up and had an impressive first win.
It was nice to see him win at home in Florida with his brother James in the booth. He's a multi-time Supercross champion, so it was a big family vibe there. I don't think that anybody was mad that Malcolm Stewart finally won.
I think that's a moment he'll never forget. Getting up there on that podium, getting interviewed by his brother, it seemed pretty special to him.
And getting up there in age. He's 32, I believe, to finally win. I mean, obviously he had success in the 250 class. I think he won 1 or 2 championships, but this 450 win has eluded him up until Saturday night, which puts the 450 points. Chase Sexton in the lead still. He leads Cooper Webb by 5. It's close up at the top. Then Jason Anderson, Ken Roxon, and Eli Tomac round out the rest of the top 5 in points.
Now, the points did get shaken up a little bit this week. Ken Roxon was looking for a big race to try to take back that points lead. But he was running in 4th, and he got caught up in the middle of 3 wide, passing a couple lappers in the sand section. And that kind of ended his race. The chain fell off, and there's just nothing left after that. So that was probably disappointing for him and unfortunate to see.
It was. I forgot about that. I knew he had a bad race, but I couldn't remember why.
And hopefully Eli Tomac is able to come back for the next race. I'm not really sure what injury he was dealing with, but it was something in his left leg.
He actually heard it this afternoon. They announced that his foot came off the peg, and he sprained his ankle. So he was running with a sprained ankle. So he was in pain. And that happened during the second practice session. So he was just happy to be. Well, I don't know if he was happy. He was just glad to be able to get out there and run and not lose too many points.
Yeah, I saw a video of him going through the whoop section, and he had his left leg completely off the peg, so he was running through the whoops with one leg.
It takes talent to do that. On a non-supercross note, but really a supercross note, you old-timers and people who enjoy the sport, 7-time supercross champion Jeremy McGrath was out in California and won the Pro Stock Naturally Aspirated UTV class at King of the Hammers on Thursday. If you don't know what King of the Hammers is, it's a sand dune rock climbing. It's hell. It was over 8.5 hours of trying to tackle that terrain. McGrath smoked everybody in his class. Also, I believe he passed 30 some UTVs, including a majority of the turbo guys. So Jeremy can still navigate off road. So that was good to see. Moving on to our NASCAR preview, what everybody's been waiting for.
It's just about NASCAR season. And so before we talk about Daytona, I think we should make our picks for the season. Now, with the NASCAR point system, it's impossible to say who the champion's going to be. I'm not a fan of the point system at all. I don't think that it gives the deserving driver the championship, but that's a whole another story.
It's their game. We got to play by their rules. So we don't pick champions. We pick who we think will make it to the Final Four or the Champion Four, whatever it's officially called.
So why don't we start out with the Truck Series? You've got defending champion Ty Majeski. I think we both picked him to be.
Yep. I picked Ty to be in the top 4.
I think he'll come back. He's really strong on the short tracks, and he's a solid all-around driver. Who did you have next?
I had Ty's teammate Ben Rhodes. I think Ben Rhodes will be back up there again this year.
You know, he is a 2-time champion. He seems to put himself in those positions to win. I wouldn't count him out.
I didn't.
Yeah. I think that Corey Haim will be back. If NASCAR had a normal point system, he would be the 2-time defending champion. Unfortunately for him, he has 0 championships. So I think he's going to be back, and he really wants that championship now.
My third pick, Tanner Gray. I'm going with one of the Grays.
Okay. Young driver out in New Mexico.
Yeah. I don't know why. He holds a good wheel, and I think that he'll be there.
You know, he's young. He's been improving. I could see him doing well, getting a couple wins maybe. I also had a young driver as my third pick. I went with Lane Riggs.
Oh, yeah.
He had those 2 wins to start the playoffs last year, even though he was not a part of them. And I think he's going to build on that momentum. He's got a lot of talent.
I'm embarrassed I forgot about him. He should be in my top 4, but he's not. So I guess that's my mistake for not having the memory of an elephant like Jim over there does. My fourth pick was the old man dropping back down to trucks, Daniel Hemrick.
You know, I can't remember Daniel Hemrick when he was in trucks the first time. I mean, I was probably too young to remember that. Who knows? But I also did go with an older veteran. I went with Grant Enfinger. He's been in the championship for the last 2 years, I believe. And he was pretty close to winning at Phoenix 2 years ago. And I believe that he is the active leader in wins in the Truck Series with 9 or 10. So I think he's still got it. He'll be up there again.
Well, hopefully we write these down, and at the end of the season we can see who has no idea what they're talking about. And it'll probably be me.
Moving on to the Xfinity Series, who do you got first?
These are in no particular order. Um, I love me some Jesse Love. I think Jesse Love, kid's been a driver. He's going to continue to be a driver. He's in good equipment, and if we were picking championships, I'd pick Jesse Love, but we're not. So he's definitely he's up there in the top four.
I think his teammate Austin Hill um, at RCR, he always wins the races early on. He's really good at restrictor plate tracks, and he's kind of the guy who you kind of say, how did he get there when he's winning the race? But he always seems to be there, um, and so I think that he's going to be in that championship for.
All right, then I've got an old guy too, Justin Allgaier. He's always there. He's going to continue to be there. I can't see picking against him.
I also have Justin Allgaier, the defending champion. He finally got that championship for junior. He had been wanting to do that for a few years, and I think he's going to try to do it again.
Next up, I've got your little guy from Junior Motorsports, Connor Zilich. I'm not going to talk about him because Jim over here, I'm sure, will. So take it away.
Well, I picked Connor Zilich. In a previous episode, picked him to win the championship, even though I said I wouldn't pick a champion. I think his driving speaks for itself. So I'm excited to see how his first season in Xfinity goes, but I think it'll be a very strong one.
And then to round out my final four, I went with Mr. Second Place, Sheldon Creed.
I also went with Creed. I don't know how many second places he's got, but he's got to be close to
more than me. I only had 2 second places in my career, and he probably had 6 last year.
The Xfinity Series has seen this before. When Daniel Hemrick won that championship, he had never won a race, and then he won the very last one. So Sheldon Creed's probably going to hope history repeats itself this year.
I think he'll break through one of these years or retire. One of the two.
All right, how about those Cup Series drivers? Who do we like for the champions?
Well, like I said, we don't pick champions, but if we did, I'd pick Kyle Larson. Kyle Larson can drive. Love him or hate him. Most people love him. I know there are people that hate him. I can't understand why. Anything he drives, he wins. Kyle Larson's going to win the championship again this year.
He had 6 wins last year. Very strong season. I also picked him for my championship for. The only concern I have is whatever NASCAR is trying to do with the Coke 600, where if he doesn't run it because he's stuck at the Indy 500, they take away playoff points or something.
If NASCAR pulls some stupid stuff like that, they're just killing themselves. Why people can't work together? Why Indy and NASCAR and Formula One and everybody else, why can't we all just get along for the benefit of the race fan who pays all the bills?
Well, I think that Kyle Larson is the best driver in the Cup Series. And so I think that even if the deck is stacked against him, he'll find a way to make it to that championship for.
Well, I like to argue with you. I won't. Next up, I've got another old dirt guy. I love my dirt guys. Christopher Bell, Joe Gibbs. He's gonna be in the Final Four this year.
I'd agree with you on that. He would have won the championship if it was the old Winston Cup standings last year. He had the best season of his NASCAR Cup career, and I see him continuing that. I think he wants to get that championship to prove that he belongs there, and he certainly does belong in the championship for.
Next up, I had to pick a Penske driver just because there's always a Penske driver there, so I went with the best, Ryan Blaney.
I would also agree there. He won the championship 2 years ago. I don't know about you, but I didn't pick the defending champion Joey Logano because it's not an even-numbered year, and he wins his championships in even-numbered years. So I think it's Blaney's turn, and there's going to be a Penske up there. Penske's been very strong across all forms of motorsport the last couple of years.
Yeah, Penske's been strong in everything. And my last one, another former dirt driver, Tyler Reddick. I think Tyler Reddick is going to have another good year for 23-11, and he will be their representative in the championship for.
As we were putting these lists together, I realized that we picked the same four for
Oh,
Cup.
we did.
We did. I also picked Tyler Reddick. He's had very good last 2 years. I think he's going to put together another one, probably 3 or 4 wins, and I see him in a position to win a championship.
All right.
Now I guess we should talk about the race this weekend, the Daytona 500.
Daytona 500. It's like Christmas in February. We get to go stock car racing real fast and real close. Everything kicks off Wednesday, qualifying on Wednesday. Then the twin duels are Thursday. We got the truck race Friday, Xfinity race Saturday, Cup race Sunday. Now, with the Cup race, we don't know how many cars are going to be in it because they've reduced the number of cars allowed to 40, but they have their new superstar exemption. I don't remember what they call it. That if you're a world-renowned driver and you don't make the show, but you file a request for this exemption 60 or 90 days ahead of time, you get a provisional spot. So Helio Castroneves, whether he makes the field or not, will be running the Daytona 500. The other drivers who have to race their way in are, sorry, I have to read this, I don't have it memorized. Corey LaJoie, Justin Allgaier, J.J. Yaley, Martin Truex Jr., Anthony Alfredo, Chandler Smith, B.J. McLeod, and Jimmy Johnson.
So that's a lot of people probably going to go home since we only have 40 cars now instead of 43.
Or 41.
Or 41.
Yeah. So, for the fans, I hope Helio does not qualify and we end up with 41 cars, just because the more cars, the better, in my opinion.
So just to clarify, Helio will be in regardless?
He's in no matter what. Because he has the new superstar race car driver exemption, which Mike Wallace couldn't have because he hadn't driven in a while and he didn't file for the exemption, so NASCAR declined to allow him to race in the Daytona 500.
Well, I guess it's hard to predict the winner.
I don't predict winners for super speedways just because you don't know.
Normally we would predict a winner. This week it's impossible. I mean, anyone could win. If you're on the lead lap, on lap 199, you could win. I do have a few drivers to watch, but first I did a little bit of research. 8 of the last 10 Daytona 500s have either ended with a caution on the last lap or a green light checkered. So there's going to be chaos. I mean, just the style of racing now, it just is because everybody's in it. The cars are all very even. The draft, I mean, it's very powerful. Whoever makes the right block and doesn't wreck or has the right run or the best spotter is probably going to be up there, but you never know what'll happen.
You don't. That's why I don't even try to pick it. I just watch and hope for some good racing and no big wrecks, because I don't like big wrecks because people can get hurt, and I'm not a crash fan. I know a lot of people watch racing for the crashes. I don't. I crashed enough in my life. I don't like to watch other people do it.
I have noticed one trend kind of in the last couple of years. There's always 1 or 2 drivers who they decide they don't care about the stage points and they just want to stay out of trouble and they drop to the back.
That's a Denny Hamlin thing to do, isn't it?
It is. And funny you should bring that up because we'll talk about him in a minute. But that strategy, I've seen it really has been working against drivers lately. Just because I think with how chaotic it is, there's going to be a couple big wrecks. You're not going to get anyone breaking away from the lead draft like you used to have, 20, 30 years ago. And so I think you need that track position and you need to try to stay up front and just hope that nobody turns you. And I've noticed that the cars who do that, like Denny Hamlin, in the last couple of years, they've been getting caught in those wrecks in the third stage, regardless. So I think the strategy is to just try to get in the front and stay there.
Be up front and stay on the bottom. Because when cars wreck, they slide to the outside. But that's just my opinion.
So I put together a list of a few drivers to watch. I have 3 who I think will do well, and 4 who I think need to really turn things around. To start out, Denny Hamlin, since you mentioned him. He's won the 500 twice, but more recently, he's only finished 2 of the last 10 races at Daytona in the top 10, and he's had a few DNFs. So it's not looking too good. He's hoping he can turn that trend around. But if anyone can do it, it's Denny. He's been there before. He knows how to win there. So we'll have to see how he does.
And he's got teammates to work with. And those Toyota guys always work together. They're pretty tight. So.
Also, Kyle Larson. I think we do fantasy NASCAR, and I never pick Kyle Larson on a drafting track because he always seems to get caught in a wreck. I don't think he's won at any restrictor plate tracks. So he's one who you don't know what'll happen, but if history proves true, he probably will end up somewhere in the middle or in an a wreck.
Kyle Larson could just start and park for it doesn't matter because he's going to do well on every other track, the intermediates, the short tracks. He's a good road course driver, so it really doesn't matter, in my opinion, what Kyle Larson does at the Daytona 500.
And then there's 2 drivers who I think they're very similar in terms of how they drive at Daytona, how they finish. Joey Logano and Chase Elliott have both won at Daytona, but they've also DNF quite a lot. And so they're very hot or cold with that. So I guess we'll have to see which side of Joey Logano and Chase Elliott we see this week at Daytona.
It depends on how hard Joey tries to block if he gets up front. Because that's scary to watch that guy drive when he's in front because he will go top to bottom to middle to top. He's just all over the place. It's like his video game controller's glitching. But I guess it works.
Yeah, I mean, say what you will, and he's a very aggressive blocker. He's got 3 championships to his name now.
That's 3 more than me.
Yeah. Now, 3 drivers who I think will do well. You've got Bubba Wallace. He's got 3 second-place finishes at Daytona. He's always very good at restrictor plate tracks. He always finds himself towards the front. He's got a bunch of Toyota teammates. I think he'll do well. Also, Christopher Bell. He has finished 3rd in both of the last 2 Daytona 500s. So he's probably looking to improve that by about 2 positions.
Another Toyota there too.
Yeah, maybe they'll work together. And last, kind of the sleeper pick, the guy who I think will find his way up there, and you won't really notice him, but he'll have a solid top 10, Zane Smith. He did very well last year. I forget who he was driving for. Was it Spire?
I can't tell you.
But I know he ended up with a top 10, and I was impressed.
All right. Is that all we got?
Yeah, that's all I got for my analysis.
All right. So next week, hopefully we'll have some fun, exciting stuff to talk about NASCAR with 3 big races at Daytona. Of course, we'll have Supercross and whatever else we can think of. If there's anything you want us to talk about, just leave it in the comments. Thank you.